This is a super simple video that is aimed at people that have decided to change their behavior in order to achieve financial enrichment. After all, just wanting is not enough. You need to change your behavior in order to achieve your desired results. So in this video, we're going to cover the basics, the minimum you need to know about financial enrichment. I'm going to share with you the most important tip of all at the end of the video. But please don't use that as an excuse to skip ahead until the end. It is very important that you really understand the material, so we're going to go through it step by step. The first step is to protect yourself against misconceptions. Because at a certain point, you probably heard someone say something such as, "Oh, I knew a man, he was so poor, the only thing he had was money." And there are infinite variations of this saying, such as, "I'd rather be poor than to be dishonest." Or, "What is the point in being rich if we're all going to end up 6 feet under?" All these sayings are misconceptions. They're fallacies. The term fallacy comes from Latin. It means to deceive. A fallacy is something that looks to be true on the surface, but upon further inspection it turns out to be untrue, wrong, or incomplete. Some people call fallacies also some limiting beliefs. Let's say, for example, he was so poor that all he had was money. Okay, fair enough. If someone only has money and nothing else, well, that person is missing very important things in life. Love, true friendships, and health, and culture, and so on. But maybe it would also be possible for him to have money and all the other valuable things in life. Don't you think so? So, the search for financial wealth does not have to come at the cost of everything else. Well, personally, I would argue that even in order for you to have everything else, you need to have your finances in order first. Now let's take a look at the other one. I'd rather be poor than dishonest. Again, that's a fallacy. Why would it be impossible for somebody to be honest as well as financially wealthy? Hopefully, you see, these examples will make you think a little bit more and realize how these fallacies can have a very destructive effect. Because when even I believe these fallacies, I'm not even going to be interested to follow the steps to become rich. I won't have the desire, the will to actively look for new information to change my behavior. These fallacies are one of the several components of limiting beliefs. They are like a mental prison that diminish our will to open the door. There is no point in giving keys to somebody who strongly believes in those fallacies. They are not interested to turn the key and open the door. Might seem simple, but this first step can be quite difficult for some people, and anybody who really wants to overcome it will be a person who will have results. Now, step number 2 would be defining useful objectives. This is step number 2. Once I'm no longer being held back by these limiting beliefs that are posed by the common misconceptions, now I need to have a vision. In order to set good quality objectives, I need to have a basic knowledge about financial education. For example, if my objective would be, well, let's say I would like to go travel, have a holiday, I'd like to buy a new car, and I'd like to have my own house and live in a nicer area. Why would I need financial education for all of that? Because without a basic knowledge of financial education, I can just get all these goals just in one day. I can just go, get my credit card, and pay for everything in installments, in payment plans. In fact, it would be quite absurd for you to realize how many people are doing this all the time. People go to travel agents, they buy the fancy holiday package, and they say, "Okay, can I pay in 10 payments?" "Yeah, sure." "Okay, just give me your credit card." "All right, that's nice. Now I'm going to a car dealership. Gonna get a new fancy car and pay over 24 months. And maybe on their way back home, they can even stop at a real estate agent and buy the house of their dreams, just signing a few contracts, and they have to promise to be paying money for these people over the next 30 years. You think it sounds a little bit crazy? Unfortunately, that's what a lot of people do. They met their objectives, don't they? That they got new holidays, they got a new car, they got the new house of their dreams. No problem, because now they are filling these objectives that are based in consumption and not with financial enrichment. What would be a different example of an objective based on financial enrichment? Would be something more or less like this. I would like to improve my knowledge about financial education. I like to pay off my loans because my interest rates are too high. I like to build equity and accumulate investments in different areas. For a lot of people, these objectives may not seem so cool as going to travel on holiday or getting a new car or living in a nice house. A lot of time, the only way to achieve the financial enrichment is to give up on certain immediate pleasures, especially the ones that you have to pay for in installments, in payment plans. In other words, you have to take responsibility and stop spending money that you do not have yet. In fact, this is an important point that deserves to be highlighted. This is step number 3. It is to understand that income alone is not a measure of wealth. Income alone is not a measure of wealth. You simply wouldn't believe how many people get in touch with us via email. And I'm going to tell you the story soon, but if you want to get in touch with us, you can use the direct contact by arata.se/contact. Because we can't always promise to be monitoring all types of social media every time, but if you do write to us through arata.se/contact, we can reply to you. Anyway, I was telling you that a lot of people get in touch with us. Many of them earn very nice salaries. They earn 5K, 20K a month. But deep down, they don't have anything. You know why? Because they spend all the money. And besides that, they still have that in the form of installments. They have that to be paying over the next 30 years. They don't invest correctly. They leave money on savings accounts because, frankly, they're a bit lazy to earn. And they would love to see their savings grow, but because of lack of technical preparation, they just can't see how inflation is having an impact in their money. They take a look at their stock funds, they think, oh, looks good, but they don't know how to calculate the management fee of the bank, and maybe they're even losing some money. They don't invest in themselves. So there's a moment they think they reached the peak of their career and they no longer make progress. In short, although these people might be doing relatively well financially today, all that is going to happen is that they're going downhill. And at the same time, there are other people who earn a lot less today, but they still manage to have their own car, a modest apartment. And in terms of assets, they are richer people. Because from the point of view of financial growth, these are people who grow richer every year because they're saving, they're investing their money. They also invest in their own education. They take courses, they get more qualified, they get promoted. In short, although these people today, they might have a modest income, today they are growing as time passes. A basic idea about financial enrichment that we need to get our heads around is that it's not just the income that matters. Income is something that matters only at the present moment. But what matters more is the process. Just think back in the physics lessons that you used to have at school. Do you remember that? Kinetics, the study of movement. Okay, there are two factors that play a very important role in movement. One is speed. The other one is acceleration. So think about income as your current speed. This is basically like a snapshot of where you are today. But in the long run, what really matters is your acceleration, and that is your wealth. That is, whether you are accelerating or if you are slowing down. Keeping the current acceleration, what is going to happen in 1 year? In 5 years from now? What about in 10 years from now? There's either going to be a process of enrichment or impoverishment. All these ideas have a lot to do with the book The Richest Man in Babylon. If you have not seen it, you can take a look at arata.se/Babylon and you can download an ebook. Okay, so now let's take a look at step number 4, which is enrichment. Everything that we've spoken so far has been building up to point number 4, enrichment. So, how do I go into this accelerated mode to increase my speed, increase my wealth? How do I let my income grow more and more? How does it happen? Remember, this is the most important thing. And the most urgent thing that needs doing is covering all the holes in the bucket. If today, for example, if you're paying off loans or finance options that have a high interest, something has to be done because this can ruin your equity. There are some special situations, however, in which it can be the situation that you can have some installment plan with a low interest rate that can help you. For example, of an exception, if you have your own business and it's bringing you a very nice profit and you're paying a little bit of interest that you took to have this business built. In this case, your profit is very high. It is so high that you can still afford to pay the interest and still make a profit. So that is okay. There are many other options, but the title of this video is The Basics, the minimum you need to know about enrichment. Because of that, we're not going to go into detail about the exceptions, about the special situations. So, getting back to the basic idea here, you need to change your habits of consumption so that every month you are saving and you are investing your money. The leftover has to be spent wisely. It is best to invest your money in different ways to do a diversification. You can go for low-risk options, you can go with controlled risk financial instruments, and also make the effort to invest in yourself, because this is how you become an increasingly more capable person to manage your equity, to make it grow, to earn more. I know that this is easier said than done. It might seem simple, but there are very few people who actually can implement a change in their behavior. So what specific actions can we take? This would be step number 5. This is build your assets. There are many ways of doing this. I'm going to share with you a really simple little tip that works for a lot of people. You should direct your income to 3 broad areas in the following order. Number 1 part goes as an investment. Once you receive a salary, automatically put some aside to invest. Number 2, another part is for your expenses. When you want to make bigger purchases, you get money from this little pile, the pile of savings for expenses. Because it makes more sense for you to be saving money over time, and then whenever you find something you want to buy, you buy it in one transaction instead of doing those installment plans and pay interest on that. And then number 3, after putting money aside for your investments and after putting money aside for your expenses, you can use the remainder to pay for all your other expenses, for example, transport and food and other recurring monthly expenses. This concept is explained in more detail in our material on The Richest Man in Babylon. You can go to arata.se/Babylon and watch the video and download the ebook. So now, let's move on to the most important point of all that I promised you at the beginning of this video. Number 6, overcoming the greatest limitation of all. Remember how we spoke about fallacies and limiting beliefs? The biggest fallacy of all of them is undoubtedly, well, yeah, it sounds like a good plan, I just can't do it now, can't start saving today, because right now it's a little bit complicated, but the day I start earning more, I will start saving, but not today. This is the most damaging thought for your enrichment. Remember, I said to you, I get in touch with a lot of different people. All of them, they write to me, I have an idea, many of them have a huge income, but it's still not enough for them. The truth is that with the wrong mindset, you're never going to get there. Because people with the wrong mindset, they increase their earnings and then they immediately increase their spending. They earn a raise, they buy a new car. If you want to achieve financial enrichment, you need to sort out your mentality. You need to learn how to behave differently. You have to think differently. First, you have to save and invest. Only then you can organize your finances for the rest of the month. The biggest mistake you can make, which ultimately will lead to impoverishment, is to spend first and then try to save what is left over. And the truth is, probably there won't be any left over. So let's now talk about next steps. From the moment we start to do all of this, to achieve the ideal acceleration, now we are entering a process of enrichment. Does it make sense? So let's be honest. It's going to take you a little bit of time to enrich yourself. If you're, for example, moving $10 per month, even $100 per month in a spending fund into your investments. It is better than nothing, of course, but this is just the first step. To take the next steps, we need to focus on increasing our value. Doesn't matter if you are an employee in a company, if you are an entrepreneur, if you are a civil servant, if you are a service provider, or if you work as a merchant, doesn't matter. If you increase the value of your work, then your income will really increase. However, let's do this one step at a time. Then we can continue this conversation another moment. This video was very simple on purpose. It's the title of the video. This is the basics. This is the minimum you need to know. So now what I suggest you to do is to visit arata.se/Babylon, where you can download an ebook, which I really recommend that you read. It is a mini ebook that builds on the conversation that we just started here and is really going to make a huge difference to your understanding of financial education. I am Arata from Arata Academy. Cheers.